Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. My guest today is Lauren Link, but my partner won't be with us. He's still out, but we got it covered. We'll hold it down until he gets back. Lauren, how are you doing, first of all? And then tell us about yourself and what you do second.
I am good. Thank you for having me on. My name is Lauren Link. As you said, I am a sports dietitian. So I'm an RD by trade. I'm a registered dietitian and certified specialist in sports dietetics. And I am the assistant athletics director for sports nutrition at Purdue University.
Okay, so right off the bat, tell us um, how you started your career and just kind of give us a walkthrough on how you got to where you are and the most important part, why.
Sure. So I went to Purdue actually as an undergrad and I played soccer here.
Okay.
And I got interested in dietetics as a whole, really because I saw how nutrition could impact family members' health. You know, I had some family members that struggled with various health issues and weight over their um, life. And so kind of got me interested in the topic. So then I was studying dietetics and playing soccer. So naturally got also kind of interested in how nutrition impacts performance. I always say I wish I would have cared a little bit more as an athlete.
Yeah, we always do. That's all of us. I wish I would have cared when I was playing. Yeah,
Right, right.
right.
Yeah, so got my undergrad, did my dietetic internship for a year, got my credential, and initially worked clinically in some hospitals in the area for about a year. And that was back when sports dietitians were like just starting to be a thing, really. There were not,
Yeah,
I think when
yeah.
I was in school, there were single digit full-time dietitians at the collegiate level. And fast forward. So I worked clinically for about a year. A part-time position opened up at Purdue in the athletic department. So I bothered some people that I knew because I had not been that far removed. Was lucky enough to get that part-time position. And then in 2014, we made that position full-time. So I was our first
Okay.
full-time dietitian within athletics. And now here I am 10 years later, worked my way into the director role, eventually the assistant AD role, and am still loving it. And you talk about, the growth of our profession back when it was single digit, in the country. Now I'm
Right.
one of six dietitians on staff here at Purdue. So it really has exploded, which has been very cool to see.
Well, the entire world of performance has grown, specifically with sports nutrition and performance dietetics and stuff like that. The importance of it used to be just you guys were the hydration people, but everybody's starting to figure out, I think, a little bit. Hey, what you put in your body really makes a difference to recovery, to you know energizing, providing fuel for what you do. I call it energizing, but providing fuel for what you do, and then for just long-term success. There's a lot of and I know you've heard some of the foolishness out there, but there's a lot of big name athletes even talking about, oh, you don't really need X, you just need to do X. And I kind of equate it to saying, do you need the weight room? Because if you need the weight room, then you probably need to know something about nutrition too.
No
And
doubt.
and so from that perspective, talk to us about the early days and why it was so important for not only for you to stick, but for others like you to just keep grinding away, because we know that early on in any profession, it can be the wild west a little bit, and it can be basically you're obscure a little bit. They stick you way over in the corner, by yourself, and you don't get invited to any meetings because we don't really think you're important, and we're hoping you go away.
Yeah.
That kind
No,
of thing. So
no doubt. I mean, you hit it on the head. I think it's kind of crazy to think back, just how much it's evolved, in my 10 years here at Purdue, back to when it was a lot more focused around hydration, sure, post workout, making a lot of
Yeah.
shakes for the players and
Yeah.
things like that. And a lot of really trying to convince people what we do, why it matters,
Yeah.
why you should let me get some time in front of your team and some of those things. And maybe the hardest part about our profession, at least, is that before we existed, somebody was doing it, right? They might not have been doing it well, but somebody was handling aspects of the nutrition program, and they were fielding questions for sure, because athletes have always had questions about what should I be eating, what should I be drinking, how much do I need? And so that's been, I think, the hard part to combat, is that somebody was doing it, and oftentimes they might feel a little bit territorial about it.
A lot bit territorial. Just I'm gonna say it. I mean, I know you don't want to say it, but and professionally speaking, I know that I've watched some of my compatriots. Um, I'm just gonna call it out. Get a little bit, you know, tightened up a little bit when you're talking about nutrition, because they really didn't believe the nutritionist who was qualified. I said, well, here was my question. Do you have your CSCS? Yes. How long have you been lifting? A long time. How much do you know about this? I'm educated, I'm certified, and I'm qualified. And that person's not.
Yep.
They have their credential, they have their education, they have their experience, and you're telling me you know more than them about nutrition. That's kind of what you I know performance nutrition has dealt with. I've seen it.
Yes.
I've watched it, and I've gone. I've said to myself, "Hey, look, I don't know near as much as someone like you does. I know something,
Sure.
but I also know enough when to hand it off. That's what
Yes.
I know."
And I can tell you myself, and probably every peer of mine has had that whole spectrum, from
Yeah.
the strength coaches. And it's not just strength coaches, although they were
No.
doing a lot of that,
Yeah.
handling of the nutrition, that is. But yeah, everything from please let me do my job and you do less of it, all the way to really supportive, collaborative
Yeah.
folks who kind of helped guide us in that right direction. So yeah, it's been a long road in some ways when I really pan out and look at it. A lot of convincing, a lot of beating down doors, as to why we needed these services. But the more we added, the more you can show your value and be in front of teams, working with athletes one on one. It just drives that need, and that's what's driven our staff growth. Is coaches want more. They see how it can be beneficial. They start hearing success stories from athletes, or and they hear some big names that have had success with good nutrition habits, and so they want more of that. And so that has definitely fueled the growth. And then of course, for those that are aware of NCAA changes, there was a legislative change about 10 years ago that also really helped fuel the growth when we opened up what we could provide athletes. It used to be very restrictive. Then they opened up feeding and deregulated feeding, which also promoted a lot of growth in our profession, just because there was more to give athletes and somebody needed to manage that.
How much how much of an issue is the confusion of for some of supplementation and nutrition? Because I know back in the day, sports nutrition, those guys sold more supplements than so-called sports nutritionists.
Mhm.
Sold more supplements and shakes, and they sold more stuff than a grocery store. And I'm like, what this is? I said, I would say, what are you supplementing? And they would look at me. I said, well, you're probably supplementing nutrition, right? Well, yeah, we're sports nutritionists. No, you're not. You are a guy with a supplement store, and that's good. I mean, that's cool. If your stuff is quality and it's been checked out, fine. But you're not a nutritionist. So I would get into, you know too much. No, I don't know too much. I don't know enough. That's why I hand it off to somebody else. But
Yeah, I
so,
mean, this is a soapbox that you could get me going on. So I'll,
well,
I'll
jump on your soapbox. You have the floor.
I mean, for sure, one of the biggest topics that we do a lot of education around is supplements. And probably a couple of the biggest points is one, just helping our athletes understand the unregulated nature of the supplement industry, and so making sure they understand if it has a supplement facts label, there has been very little regulation before it gets on the shelves, unfortunately. And we keep seeing more and more studies done that confirm how big of a problem this is.
Right.
And so we try to make sure that our athletes understand, that means that they can make whatever claims they want on that label. It doesn't have to be accurate. It can have banned substances in it that aren't listed.
Right.
It can have inaccurate ingredient panels. It could have more of that ingredient than it says is in it, or less, or none.
And nobody's checking.
Exactly. So we do a lot of education around that, just trying to make sure that our athletes are safe, of course, with it, but also that they stay eligible, right?
Right.
The other piece of it, probably the other big piece of it, is just helping them understand, like, yeah, there are some great supplements out there. We're not anti-supplement as long as it's been third party tested and it makes sense. But what we see athletes do so often is jump to supplements far before their habits support that. And so we talk a lot about foundational nutrition, and if you think of a pyramid, and there's lots of visuals out there that show this, if we think about a nutrition pyramid, well, that foundational stuff should be, are we eating regularly? Are we balancing our plate with carbs and protein? And, are we recovering post-workout? Are we hydrating? All those kinds of things. And if we're doing those basics, then maybe we can start talking a little bit more specific. Let's talk about fighting inflammation. Let's talk about what your needs for your training. Maybe we can periodize our nutrition a little bit. And if we're doing that, then okay, cool. Then let's talk about supplements, right? We can, if we're doing all the foundational stuff, absolutely, maybe we do need a supplement, or maybe we're deficient in something. That's a great reason to take a supplement.
I've talked to others in your field, and this is what I always say. If you supplement crap, it's still going to be crap.
No doubt.
So you would be the first one to disagree with me if you do. So I'm going to ask you, why would you supplement anything remotely close to a normal collegiate nutritional stack habit? But just get that right, and they're going to improve. The athlete's going to improve 50 times. If there's a deficiency, then there's a whole different thing, and it becomes medical and yada yada yada. But generally speaking, you were a college soccer player and my daughter was a college soccer player. When you guys got a chance to eat, man, it was like, get out of the way. But it was better to see that than for you to starve.
Yeah.
Which is
often athletes want to just jump to the supplement. They see it on TikTok, they see it on Instagram, whatever. But meanwhile, they're skipping meals. They're eating snacks all day,
inappropriate snacks.
Right. Yeah. They're eating chips and ice cream every night and not eating a solid dinner. I mean, I could go on. Again, I work with college students, so of anybody.
You've seen that diet up close and personal.
Yes, exactly. So we will recommend supplements. We do provide some supplements, but always for a reason and never just to skip the step of foundational nutrition.
Again, I make fun of supplement use a lot, just from what I've seen, my own experience, and all kinds of stuff. However, I do believe that there is a need for correct, appropriate supplementation when administered with the advice of a professional.
Absolutely.
Period. I mean, it's I believe in it, but I believe in it in such a way that I'll make fun of it when I see people just, I'm going to take creatine. I said, that's okay. What are you going to take it for? That's my question. What are you going to take it for?
Right.
I want to get bigger. Wrong reason. Why don't you go find out why you would take creatine before you just start taking it by the buckets full?
Yeah.
I watch
and
guys,
spending the money on it.
Yeah, I watched guys take, the big old drums of creatine you can get. I watched a guy take a big old 1 cup scoop and put in his jug 2 scoops and then shook it up. I said, you're going to take that? For what? I said, what have you eaten today? Well, if I take this, I get energized. I said, no, I don't think so. But okay, whatever you say. And I'm kind of joking here a little bit and giving some people some grief, but I know that this is something that you guys seriously pay attention to and watch. And if you ever seen that, you would, especially from an athlete at Purdue, you might somebody might have to hold you back.
Yeah, we would be inserting ourselves in that situation.
Exactly. So let's kind of transition a little bit. We talked about how you got into um, the field and why, but let's talk a little bit about. And I ask this question in some kind of way a lot to every professional, but your profession, where it was, we talked about the initial, where it is right now, we kind of talked about. Where does it need to be? Where does it need to go?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to lead with kind of an asterisk because there's so many changes happening in the NCAA right now.
I'll accept that.
And so it'll be very interesting to see kind of where things land in terms of staffing models and how sports are laid out. And, there's just a lot of things that'll be interesting. With that said, I think our profession continues to get more individualized. That's what coaches want a lot. That's what athletes want more of is, I want an individualized plan. I want individualized education. And so we do quite a bit of that. And certainly we do a lot of team education and approaches as well. But when you talk about making sure that they have, an adequate meal plan, and I say meal plan, we don't do a ton of really strict meal plans because we're working with 18 to 22 year olds. They're not following a strict meal plan, but making sure they have what they need from a supplementation standpoint, like making sure that that's individualized. We're not just throwing supplements at people. Now we're vitamin D testing, we're iron testing. Sometimes we'll do a whole panel on somebody if there's a good reason. So a lot more ingrained in the injury and rehabilitation side of things, working closely with our medical staff. So I just think there's a lot more support to do those things, to be involved in that way. And we've just gotten a lot more hands-on in terms of, especially with some sports, if we talk about football, we're staffing multiple RDs at a football practice. We're getting very individualized with hydration. So sweat testing and hydration testing. We travel with the team. So there's a lot more being ingrained in a program, depending on the level and the sport that we're talking about. And so I think it could go in a direction, if you talk about strength coaches, 10, 15 years ago, a lot of strength coaches at the collegiate level were covering 3 to 5 or more teams. Now you're starting to see a lot more that work with one team, maybe 2 teams. Because they're spending time at practice, they're spending time on the road. They're a lot more ingrained in that sport, and so I think that's the direction that we're generally heading. Kind of following a similar model, just at a slightly more delayed pace. We're a little newer to the scene, respective to college athletics. So I think that's where it is probably going / could go. Again, just with that in mind that I led with of who knows exactly where we're going to end up.
Yeah, nobody knows
as everything shifts.
the what the direction. I'm old, see, I'm real old. My daughter's probably older than you, but what I like is the kind of all of these different professions in performance, the AT, the strength coach, everybody except the skills coach. He kind of, we're doing all this for him and the team, so I kind of set him over here or her over here. But the nutritionist, the psychologist, the whoever, the massage therapist, the physical therapist, all these people are you're starting to see a lot more team building. And while I think it's critical for that to happen, we don't want to also lose focus on from a professional standpoint. We don't want to lose focus on the importance of each one of them separately. Just because you have a team, we have our team over here, but you got one guy doing everything or 2 people trying to do it. No input from everybody. So the ownership of that as a director, you're director, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I had it right, and then something in my brain said, no, you're not right. But I talk to myself a lot, so don't worry about that. The as a director, not losing focus on your team, while also participating as a member and having them participate as members of that larger team? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think within like my team for sports nutrition, we try to stay, and it can be hard to do this because especially when you talk about Olympic sports versus football,
Right,
sometimes that gets very siloed. And we
right,
have tried really hard here to avoid that, and I think we do a good job. But we try to keep regular touch points, regular staff meetings with my whole group, making sure that we have some like really general or like overarching departmental goals that apply to any sport that we have, and that we have some common things that we're all a part of. We have an eating disorder treatment team. All of the dietitians sit on that. We have, and a couple of things that I could probably bring up, that like all the dietitians are sitting in on that, so that everybody has some kind of common goals, themes, etc.,
okay,
despite the sports that they're working on or working with. But I think then, yeah, you pan out, and it's interesting because I can say this for sports dietitians, and I think most of our adjacent professionals would say the same, is you're kind of like part of this big macro group, like we all report. So we are like considered sports medicine, and we report up through the same umbrella as the athletic trainers, the physicians, the strength coaches, the psychologists, etc. And so it's like this one big group, but then we also each work with a handful of different teams, and you've got kind of your micro group
yeah,
within those as well. And I think the best case scenario for all of us is that micro group is having kind of a similar approach, like regular touch points, being communicative, being collaborative, and kind of going back to what we very first started with, of just recognizing like we all got to play together in the sandbox nicely, but we all got to stay in our lanes. And to your point, like we talk about that a lot. I have a degree in health and kinesiology. That doesn't mean I should go write a workout. That's not my specialty.
It's not your practice right now.
Right. And so I think we do a pretty good job of that, and it can be hard with turnover in college sports, but as long as we're all trying to communicate, collaborate, stay in our lanes, and recognize that ultimately our goal is all the same. And that includes the sport coach too. We all want good performance, and we want healthy, well-balanced student athletes.
Right.
And I think that's what we lean on sometimes, is that kind of reminder, like, okay, wait, even though we have different approaches or maybe different opinions, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing.
Everybody's a spoke, and the athlete is the center.
Absolutely.
And so if their performance is getting better and their health is steady, at least steady, then everybody's doing okay. So let's talk about. So we've talked about working together internally. Do you work with any physicians or anybody outside of the yard, so to speak, the house, the family home? Because I know that I most of my career I spent as a private practitioner, and I worked with a lot of high schools, a lot of colleges, uh, and sometimes it could be challenging walking into a team from the outside when you're just invited in to be a troubleshooter, basically. You guys are right next to it and on top of it all the time. Maybe somebody outside your organization sees something you don't see, or the group doesn't see, because you're too close. In that case, would you work with somebody outside? Have you thought about it? Have you done it? And what do you think about all that? I have my thoughts, but I'll talk a little bit in a minute.
Yeah, I think it just really depends. I mean, we do some of that for sure. So like outside physicians probably being the biggest example, whether it's an athlete getting sent out for surgery to a different ortho, or they're seeing somebody from home, we deal with that to some extent for sure. Past that, I would say it really kind of depends, and we don't do a ton of it. For one just from a resource standpoint, if we have resources in-house, we try to keep it in-house.
Yeah, if you have it and the athlete's there, it's dumb to kind of send it out, but I got you.
Right. So we don't do a ton of it, and I can say, like, from my perspective with nutrition, we really don't do much, if any, unless it was like sending somebody for like a higher level of eating disorder care or something like that. But if we do bring somebody in, so like a couple examples I could think of would be, chiropractic care we bring in, psychiatry we bring in, um, and a couple times like different coaches have wanted like mental performance coaches, whereas we have psychologists on staff, but this would be somebody that maybe specializes in
And
team
yeah,
bonding or whatever. So we will do that stuff. We just as a program try to vet that person to make sure that, because especially around some subjects like you mentioned at the very beginning, when it
yeah,
comes to nutrition, you can get all kinds of wacky stuff, and the
yeah.
same could probably be said about a lot of professions. So we will vet them and bring them in sometimes, but I would say more often we try to keep it in house.
One of the things that I talk about on that end is I've walked into some Division One colleges and been unimpressed. Walked into some high schools, been very impressed, and vice versa. What impressed me the most was the eagerness on both sides. With high school and the collegiate. What impressed me the least was the egos, and the reason for that is I always walked in to be a value added proposition to whoever, the director, the coach, whoever called me in there, whoever wanted to see me. And a lot of times it ended up being an athletic director would call me in to go talk and work with a coach or another assistant director or something, and that person wouldn't know about it. So, I'd be tiptoeing by the time I got in there just to try to figure out, okay, what were you told or what weren't you told? Like, say I come in to work for you, and all of a sudden I show up. I say, hey, Lauren, how you doing? Where you want me to start? And you go, start? What do you mean? So, well, your boss told me to come down here because you needed some help with X. I never liked that situation because now
Yeah,
you don't
that's
know. Yeah, but I never walked in like that. It was always different, an introduction and saying, hey, look, this is why I'm here. And how can I help? That's the question I always ask. How can I help? And sometimes they say, well, I know one guy said, well, how can you help? So then I told him. They said, oh, we can use you. All right. So then we got started. One of the, before we start talking about how you got hornswoggled into writing a book, we're going to, let's talk a little bit about you mentioned you had some early experiences, but your first thought when you walked in right off the graduation podium into your first job, and then your first thought when you started what you're doing right now.
You're really calling on my memory a little bit here,
Hey,
but I mean, I think, after graduation, probably like most new grads, I was just excited to get started. Um, and excited, feeling fancy with my credential and whatnot. So, yeah, I remember being excited, even though I was not especially thrilled about a clinical job. It's not where I wanted to be ultimately.
right.
I liked it more than I thought I would, and enjoyed kind of the different challenges. And it definitely kind of solidified some of the things that I had been learning, in a classroom setting and an
Yeah.
internship setting. So that was pretty cool. I didn't hate it. And then, but definitely, like I said, I mean, I knew sports nutrition is where I wanted to end up. I just didn't know how quickly it was going to be realistic or not for me to get there. When I started at Purdue, I was very excited. I mean, it was like kind of dream job, fell in my lap a little bit. But I will say, like early on, so I took that part-time role, did that for about 6 months. 6 months to a year, give or take. And then I got the full-time role, and I was like pumped again, like, oh my gosh, got my dream job. I, at the time, was under, because there was a part-time director there who was a mentor, a friend. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to learn from her. And like, this is going to be so awesome. And about, I don't even know, less than a month after I started full-time, she resigned. And went into academia full time. And so I remember being like pretty crushed about that, like, oh my gosh, like now I'm here by myself. Like, do I know what I'm doing? And then like 2 weeks after that is when the NCAA deregulation passed, and our world kind of blew up. So I was
Yeah.
this like brand new pretty baby RD in this dream job, but also having a like holy crap moment of
Now
I don't know
you're
if I
on
know what
the
I'm doing.
tip of the spear.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was definitely some turbulence early, and some moments where just like shut the office door, shed a tear or two, and, and try to figure out what the heck I was doing. But
Pull
it worked
yourself
out.
together.
Yeah, it worked out
No,
overall. But it was definitely a little bit turbulent in the early days.
I think we all experienced a little bit of that. Um, in some cases, it's almost better to be thrown into the fire like that and have to sink or swim, as opposed to be getting drug along the whole way, and then
For sure.
all of a sudden, you get offered a job, but you really don't want it because you know you don't know anything, or
Right.
you don't know enough. So a few of those getting tossed in the deep ends throughout your career, you'll learn to appreciate a lot more than somebody dragging you along with the water wings on.
Yes, it
Yeah,
all panned out for the best in the end. I survived.
and that's all that matters, really. You get on through.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about this book.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you go with it. Just tell me about it.
Okay. Well, it's called Nutrient Timing, Unlocking Strategies for Peak Performance.
Okay, before you start,
Yep.
my athletes always tell them nutrition is about what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, and why to eat. Now go. Ready, set, go.
Yep. Nutrient timing, unlocking strategies for peak performance. And yeah, it's a lot. It's funny because Human Kinetics reached out asking if I would be interested in writing this book, and in our space, like Human Kinetics is
Yeah,
one of the big publishers. So I kind of felt like, well, I got to do that. If Human Kinetics is
yeah.
calling,
If they're gonna ask me,
right? But I do remember thinking like, okay, but nutrient timing, like that's really specific. Like, can I really write a whole book regarding the timing of different nutrients? And then once you start, you're like, yep, there it is. There's a whole book.
how many chapters did you leave on the desk?
You know, probably a few. I feel like
Yeah.
we got like the good stuff, but
Okay.
but definitely yeah, I mean timing is so important, and I say it to athletes all the time. Obviously, I care what they eat. What they eat is important, but in
Right.
some settings like when you eat it is as or sometimes even more important. So yeah, timing really plays into just about everything that you could do, whether it's pre-workout, post-workout, when you're timing different things, like macronutrients and so forth. Supplements, a lot of them have a timing aspect.
Right.
So I would say, like, as a whole, even though it is timing centric, it covers a lot of basic nutrition principles. I would consider it a great resource for an athlete who's really looking to like dig in and get kind of more specific with their nutrition, or like a young practitioner, whether it was a young RD or even a strength coach trying to learn a little bit more about it, athletic trainer and so forth. It's definitely written for more of a lay audience, like not just a nutrition professional. But it does include a lot of research and some updated research. That was a big goal with the book from Human Kinetics standpoint is, we need an update on the research because there's a lot of stuff that's changed since the last time we addressed this topic.
Right. So Human Kinetics called you. You were just kind of sitting around, didn't really have any information together. How'd you get started?
That was a hard part, honestly, getting started. I think first steps were just trying to figure out, what am I gonna talk about when it comes to timing? And luckily had some great folks at Human Kinetics to bounce ideas off of and get their feedback. But yeah, just kind of started with like trying to make a table of contents, like what topics am I trying to hit? What do I think pertains to this subject, and lay it out that way. And then almost like, if you go back to
Writing that
ninth
dissertation
grade,
all over again,
yeah, write your outline, and start just plugging away. And that's what I did. There were some nights where I was like, why did I agree to this?
Yeah.
But we got there.
So how long's the book been out?
About 2, 3 months.
Yeah, I was gonna say it hasn't been very long because
Yeah,
I've been a partaker of resources from Human Kinetics for they've been out there 50 years. I've been 23. I've
nice.
been buying their stuff. They should give me a little stock
Yeah, I hear the plug for you.
or you know.
I'm following.
Anyway, the when we talk about professionals and kind of stepping outside of our purview, what did it feel like to step outside what you do from a day to day and then try to write a book? You know what I mean? You're writing on your professional subject matter, so it's not like you jumped off the Empire State Building. But seriously, that's a little different than what you do every day.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, one thing that comes to mind was just trying to make sure that I was keeping in mind all the different folks that might have eyes on this book, right? I think very much collegiate focused because I work with that population. So a lot of things I do when I think about education and problems that my folks have, it's like in the frame of an 18 to 22-year-old. But I really had to kind of pan out and think I could have high school athletes reading this, masters athletes reading this, not to mention sports that I don't usually see,
Right.
Ironman and triathletes. And I
Oh
mean,
yeah, those guys are
pick
gonna
up.
read it. Ultra
Yes.
endurance runners, because that I find that's one sports area. The endurance guys and ultra endurance and all those they're all over top of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's
You
just
got to be
when
to pull off some of the stuff
yeah
they do. It's crazy.
yeah. So
So that was definitely kind of a challenge and just trying to make sure that I was thinking broad, picture of who might have this in their hands and what kind of challenges might they have that my athletes don't or that I don't usually think about. Um, and then I think the other thing that came to mind as you were asking that question is just the like mindset of like you go do your job and then you get home and you think like, okay, now I gotta sit down and keep using my brain and
that
write a
that was
book.
gonna be the other part of that. When how was it to turn off work and then be able to turn on the book writing?
Yeah, at
That
times
yeah.
challenging. At times challenging for sure. Luckily, I'm somebody who doesn't do well with like a ton of free time. I'm like my husband would tell you he finds it exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't love just sitting around and
Will you find something to do? Yeah.
I don't love sitting around. I always need something to do. So that was a positive. Um but definitely you start to see like, oh, the writer's block and some of that you hear about is a real thing. There were some nights I was pretty uninspired.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. I could just imagine you right now. You just spent all day with a group of college students or groups of college students and your peers, and you're exhausted, and you go home and you eat dinner, whatever that is, when you walk in the door, whatever time that is, and you remember you have to write a chapter in a book.
Exactly. Painful sometimes.
Yeah.
And don't forget the part about the toddler at home that I have to get in
Oh,
bed
you
and
you
then
are you are a superhero then, cause my daughter's got a toddler right now, and I just do this,
yeah, they're
and
crazy. They're a whole
I'm
different breed.
I'm like, yeah, she calls her feral, my feral child. Well, anyway, we're talking about we'll run away from the kids right now and bring it back here. So you're writing the book, you're doing that, you get done, must be a sense of accomplishment. What now? Now you don't have anything to do when you get home. So what are you focusing on besides your toddler?
Well, I feel like I always have plenty to do at work. We keep ourselves busy here. And we're opening a all athlete dining hall here in about a month and a half.
Nice.
So we're excited about that. It's been a long time coming. So that's keeping me busy for sure. Um, I am actively growing another child that's
All
due in
right.
about a month and a half. So that'll keep me plenty busy as
Oh yeah.
well.
See, you trying to be a real parent. That's one,
That's
two.
two. That'll be two. Yep. Man to man. We're not going zone. I think I'm calling it after
She
this.
said,
But yeah, so I'm at this point I'm not too worried about needing any other projects. I think I got enough on my slate coming up. But
Yeah, I would say so.
But I am always trying, I do a fair amount on social media trying to just talk about the misinformation out there. We keep kind of coming back to that, but that is a passion point for me, trying to make sure that I am doing my part to combat some of that misinformation and make sure that
Well,
there are good sources of credentialed info out there.
well, I'd like to hear that, and I say you have some peers in your field who are also out there doing that. I would say not enough. Not enough of you guys are battling the misinformation, but I get it when you're trying to grow the profession and do a whole bunch of other stuff. Sometimes you kind of miss that. My field, which is specifically, um, I used to have a credential in almost all fields, but I don't anymore because it got too hard. Just I got too lazy, is what it was. So now it's just strength and conditioning, but it used to be strength conditioning, athletic training, and nutrition, and with a degree. But they're all full time jobs. But until I got into it and started working, I didn't realize they were all full time jobs. And now they're even more full time jobs. But the question I was gonna to give you right now is advice for new RDs, advice for peers like you said. I call you guys seasoned professionals. You're 10 years in now. You're no longer a newbie. I no longer look at you and go, what? You are now the leaders or the evolving leaders in the profession. So what do you have for those guys who are coming into those positions? And what do you have for the old folks that have been in it a while and might need a little pick me up? So newbies, peers, old people.
I would say newbies, I I would probably really emphasize just the importance of relationships in the athletic setting. It is so much about that rapport, and that goes for with your athletes, with the peers that you collaborate with every day, with your coaches, especially again in our field. Even though we have to do a lot less beating people's doors down, people understand why nutrition is important most of the time. We do have to do a lot of just relationship building and making a case for why we need to be involved with a team, or need to do more with a team. And so I just think relationship building goes so far, whether it's with a
Important, yes.
coach, a
Yeah.
strength coach, a chef, a athletic trainer, you name it. It can go a really long way, and it can go a long way in your career, right? Because athletics,
Yeah.
it's lots of revolving doors, so people end up all over the place. You just never know when you might come back, and that administrator
You're
is now
gonna
at
come
this
back.
school, yeah, that you're at
It's gonna
now,
happen.
for sure.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I would tell the newbies. The peers, that's a good question. I think probably, I tell people a lot, just, like, there's so many job opportunities out there at any given time. And I have seen a lot of my peers do a lot of job hopping, which is fine, depending on what you've got going on in life.
Mm-hmm.
And like, absolutely climb the ladder, make more money, whatever. But I think definitely don't lose sight of some of like your values and what really matters to you in a job. So whether it's the values of that organization, do they align? Family, work-life balance. I mean, there's a lot of things. Money's important, but there are a lot of things that are more important than money too. And so I have seen sometimes people lose sight of that a little bit and just want the next opportunity, and end up in some situations that can be really draining, really, yeah, they kind of pull from you in all directions, and it's
Yeah.
not great.
That's actually great advice for peers. And because at the 10 to 15 year mark, you see a lot of the things you just brought up. Hey, I'm gonna go do this job because, dude, you got a great job.
Yep.
And you have a great job and you have time for your family.
Right.
In that job, you're gonna be on the road 6 days a week. Why are you taking that job?
Yep.
Oh wow, but I make $5 more a year. Who cares? You know
Yeah,
what I
whether it's
mean,
money,
though.
whether it's money or sometimes just like clout,
Yeah,
feeling like this is going to
yeah.
be the big name opportunity or whatever
It's
it is.
Notre Dame. Yeah, but they ain't won a game. And no, I'm just teasing. I'm not talking about any colleges. I might
Yeah,
need a
I think
job.
it's definitely worth considering the big picture.
Yeah. And
And
then
then
old people.
the old people, man, I don't know. I think for our profession at least, I have some good friends who have been in the profession a bit longer than me. Um, and I think I would say like don't feel like you have to just be doing this your whole career, right? And I say this as in like practicing sports nutrition, seeing athletes one on one, making the smoothies, doing the hydration testing,
Right.
whatever it is. Because we're a young profession, I think we just haven't seen a lot of that opportunity past that. Maybe, a lot of us now are in, director roles or assistant AD roles, and we are more administrative. But to me, there's no reason why a dietitian can't oversee a sports medicine department, just like an athletic trainer could, or a strength coach
Strength
could, or
coach or psychologist. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. There's no reason that you couldn't be administrative over teams, like have team oversight, like to be a sport admin. And
Sure.
actually, I have a colleague who's an assistant GM for an MLB team.
Good.
And he has really paved the way. So like, I think what I would tell some of the older folks is don't feel like you have to get stuck in the rut of just like doing dietitian things, every day forever. I think we have a very qualified skill set that can oversee groups at large, or administrative skill sets and so forth.
I tell
It's a
people
great
right
framework.
now at my age, it's all about leadership and mentorship. And I can lead any team, any size, anywhere, any kind. May take me a little bit to learn what we do, but as long as I can do that,
Yep.
if it's in the field of performance, it doesn't matter. I can lead it.
Yeah,
And then you can always be a mentor to somebody. So
definitely we need more
those
mentorship.
those are the two things I think, as you grow in your profession and you get long in the tooth, that you should consider doing. And both of them are service oriented and giving back. Those
Definitely.
those are the two things. All right. We've just about covered everything we normally covered. Chris usually comes up with a couple more questions, but I only have one more.
Okay.
We know about the actively growing new human you have. So that's part of what's next. But professionally, what's next, do you think, or would you like to be next?
That's a good question. I think, I love the collegiate space. I have always really enjoyed this age group of young adults becoming actual adults,
Yeah,
or we hope so at
most
least.
of the time.
Right. Um, so I would love to stay in the collegiate realm. You never know, obviously, where the landscape is going to take us.
Right.
But I would love to stay in the collegiate realm and continue to work towards more administrative roles, which, like I said, I have a fair amount of now. But I enjoy leading teams, similar to kind of what you said. I enjoy that aspect. So to me, it would be like collegiate administration.
Okay. All right. So tell us. I think we know where we can find the book, but tell us where we can find the book.
Yep, you could find it on Human Kinetics website, or Amazon, or any other like online retailer that sells books. I think the big ones, if you look, you can find it there.
And the name of it.
Nutrient timing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Yule Gordon. Our guest today has been Lauren Link, and we have talked about a whole slew of things. And it has been great, Lauren. I appreciate you making the time and working through our little turbulence we had up front. It was not bad turbulence, people. It was just stuff that happens. But I appreciate you being on, and hope that you would consider coming back if we ask you. And we'll let you know when this is all ready to hit. But thank you very much, and thanks for your time and your energy today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Performance Talk, and we're gone.